Good morning, Dog Nation. I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. We are so loaded on today's show. Before we're done, our guy Cody Chafin's going to stop by, going to team up with me. We're going to make a very fun announcement. We love high school football around here. We get a chance to make a great announcement as it relates to high school football on this show. Some of this also overlaps with UGA recruiting. My guess is you'll like it. We'll give that to you coming up here in just a little bit. There was a very unpleasant rumor involving one SEC team yesterday, perhaps a little bit overblown. We'll kind of find out what that is all about on the show today. Terrence Edwards stops by. There was a sort of a prediction that I made the other day on the show that has turned out to be true. It has drawn a big reaction from UGA fans. We'll give you that here in a little bit. Going to really like that. And off the top of the program, to be completely honest, I really, really enjoyed the Mike Bobo press conference from yesterday. There was a lot of good stuff at Georgia with the various coaches we heard speak. The Bobo, though, in many ways, because we had spent so much of the show on Wednesday talking about it, was some of the most important stuff to take place yesterday. I thought you got a lot of really good things from Bobo. I think it's worth revisiting that here today. Great energy, a lot of accountability, and some optimism for why this upcoming season may be better for Georgia than last year was. This was, I think, a really valuable use of any Georgia fans' time who kind of tuned in to see this on our DawgNation YouTube page. We're going to play back some of the highlights here right now as we get things started. It is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, and it begins right now.
Today's episode.
There's no doubt, but I think your identity on.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Merriweather and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. Find them online at georgiadivorceteam.com.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
So if you read between the lines a little bit, when we heard from Kirby Smart last week to kind of kick off Georgia fall camp, I kind of insinuated in the show that I thought the press conference was a little bit weird. And I don't really know even what I mean by that. I just thought that the vibe was a little bit off. I don't blame Kirby Smart for it. I don't really blame the reporters asking questions, but just something about that didn't quite feel the way I wanted it to feel. And I'm speaking as a Georgia fan here. And to a certain extent, some of the SEC Media Day stuff was a little bit the same way too. And I don't make a big deal about that because Media Days is this sort of weird event when you're in the big podium room. The tone of the conversation is going to be directed by those who get to ask questions. And oftentimes, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it's sort of a random collection of people who get chosen to ask questions. And so sometimes you get sort of a random collection of answers coming from the coach, and it ends up not being perhaps as valuable as it could be. And I would say that for the last couple of weeks, as we've kind of rolled into the true start of the preseason in anticipation of the start of the season, I think some of the stuff that we've kind of heard around Georgia, to once again sort of use the phrase, I just sort of think the vibe has been off. It hasn't been quite as energetic as I'd like for it to be. It hasn't been quite as on topic as I would like for it to be. And I just thought with all of that in mind, now maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's just my intuition itself being off. I completely own that. I am wrong frequently. You can just add this to the things I've been wrong about if it's me who's a little off on this. But one way or another, if there's any truth in what I've said about what's been kind of coming from Georgia the last couple of weeks, I thought yesterday was a big step in the right direction when it comes to casting the right narrative for Georgia for the upcoming season. And I got to tell you, given the circumstances, obviously so much has been spoken about with Mike Bobo over the course of the last few months. Offensive coordinator almost always going to be in the spotlight for all college football teams. It's just the easiest thing to second guess. In Bobo's case, he's been here for a long time. There's a lot of backstory there. And the fact is, Georgia just offensively in a lot of ways last season was not as good as it needed to be. It just wasn't. I think the basic counting stats tell that story. You don't have to be some sort of actuarial scientists to make sense of that. It is there for us to see in plain sight. Georgia needed to be better offensively. The team itself still found a way to make the playoff, still found a way to win the SEC. That's commendable, but it could have been even better if the offense was a little bit better. So it's obvious they are seeking improvement in that regard here in 2025. And for the Georgia fans who kind of find themselves on all ends of the spectrum about that discussion, some Georgia fans look at the Bobo haters, as they call them, and say, these people can't be happy with anything. Some people sort of look at this as, well, some Georgia fans are just naive. They don't hold the program to a high enough standard. Like, wherever you kind of come from on the very far ends of that fan conversation spectrum, I got to tell you, I think you should have found something that you liked from what Mike Bobo said yesterday. And we're going to be a little clip heavy for a moment. I think the conversation yesterday is significant enough that it's worth that. And I want to start with this very first answer out of the block from Bobo. Georgia got off to, of course, slow starts offensively last season. If we're being honest, slow starts were also a little bit of an issue for an otherwise stellar offense in 2023 too. So laying it right there for Bobo to talk about, what do you make of the fact that last year you just sort of got off to some slow starts offensively? Well, right from the gate, we got the indication from Coach Bobo yesterday that there would be a ton of accountability, a ton of plain speaking, and just recognizing the same narrative that fans themselves would say they've seen. And I think that's always a good thing when everybody seems to be aligned. Yesterday, an example of that. Let me let you hear Bobo kind of owning up to the fact that a year ago, sometimes Georgia just got off to some all too slow starts offensively to begin games. This is Bobo from yesterday.
There's no doubt. Anytime you start a football game, you want to start fast. We always talk about starting fast at the beginning of each half, and the last end in the half as well. You go through it, and a lot of times a lot of it was execution issues. And then sometimes, to be quite frank, it was a little bit being conservative in those situations. And then the other side of it, the teams we played were pretty good on defense and, stopped us early in games. But that's been a big point of emphasis of ours. There's several of them, but starting fast is one of them. And you'd like to start fast every day. And sometimes every game, but sometimes starting fast, does not necessarily mean, your touchdown, or, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Sometimes starting fast is, you get a couple first downs and you change the field position. When you go 3 and out to start games, that's something we definitely got to improve on.
So listen, even at the end when Bobo says, hey, fast start doesn't always mean, touchdown to begin the game, even that I'm okay with, even though to some ears it sort of sounds like he's mitigating the other things he just said, because one way or another, whether it's correct or not, fair or not, Georgia obviously values pace of play in terms of its overall strategy. So within the confines of what Georgia typically does and has historically done pretty well, even that final comment I'm sort of okay with. But the bigger stuff is the stuff that Bobo says, first of all, at the beginning, there's no doubt we need to get off to faster starts offensively. Y'all, that's ownership. That's accountability. That's buck stops here type stuff. Like, that is exactly what you want your coach to say. And if I'm being completely honest, as much as I love Kirby Smart as a Georgia fan, Kirby didn't own the moment quite the same way after the Sugar Bowl. We've played the clip a million times when he was asked about offensive struggles, and he, talked about, well, we played a pretty tough schedule, and there was injuries, and there was this, and there was that. It was a lot of stuff other than there's no doubt we need to get better. But essentially the first words out of the mouth of Bobo yesterday, facing a series of, pretty pointed and challenging questions, is there's no doubt we need improvement. And y'all, I'm asking you right now not to gloss over that, because a lot of college football fans will tell you, whoever their favorite team is, you don't always get that level of accountability from those in charge. They don't always feel like they need to. At a place like Georgia, if they wanted to sidestep that accountability, there's been enough success here. They probably could do that. But in the case of Bobo yesterday, he didn't really want to do that. And as I said before, no matter how you feel about his stewardship of this Georgia offense overall, I do think, if you're being fair, you should like that. And to kind of move to the next phase of this, we spent a bunch of time on the show yesterday saying, boy, boy, I really hope that the lion's share of this discussion is spent talking about how you get better with the running game. That I don't want Gunnar Stockton to be the most important player in this team. Not because I don't believe in Gunnar. I think many of you know I am a big believer in Gunnar. But if the entirety of the Georgia football conversation this fall centers around Gunnar Stockton, I would say that something's kind of gone wrong. What I want is Georgia getting back to something it was, frankly, pretty terrible with a year ago. I want Georgia to be better when it runs the ball. I want it to kind of bring back some element of the rushing attack that it just didn't have last year. And I said going into yesterday, I want Bobo to talk a bunch about that during this press conference. Well, I got my wish. It started with a question to Mike about, hey, what about the overall playing personality of your team this year? What's your identity going to be? And it didn't take him long for Coach Bobo to pivot that in the direction that I said on the show yesterday I thought it needed to go. Here was Bobo again.
But I think your identity on, everything starts with the run game. At any level, you've got to be able to run the ball and stop the run. And that's been an emphasis of ours since we got back from the Sugar Bowl and started meeting as a staff and meeting with our players. How can we improve in that area? And I'm not just talking about numbers. I'm talking about being efficient. And a run game is not going to just help you offensively. It's going to help your quarterback. It's going to help your defense. It's going to help all areas. And, hopefully our identity will be we will be efficient in the run game, and everything will run through that.
So good stuff from Mike Bobo. I'll also say I've got a little bit of a message here that maybe the audio from me is a little loud. I'll back off the mic a little bit. We might want to pay attention to that level. Maybe some people are saying maybe it's a little bit loud. I'm also probably just screaming today, which is sometimes, my, I guess, want. But nonetheless, to hear, Bobo very quickly pivot to, we want to establish an identity around running the football. Y'all, that is what we would say that Georgia needs to do, given what it wasn't great at a year ago, and given the fact that, I would say that for offensively Georgia last season, everything just sort of looked hard. It looked hard, and that's because a lot of times Georgia wasn't getting the easy stuff that it could have gotten if it was just a little bit better running the football. And so to hear once again Bobo sort of own that, to have his words yesterday match the ongoing conversation the fans are having, once again, I take that as a really good thing. But the other part of this is, it's not just, to use the phrase that Smart used during spring practice, we're harping on it and we got to do this and got to do that. I thought that yesterday also from Coach Bobo had a certain level of not just we're demanding this, we're doing that. It's not, in other words, it's not just sort of doom and gloom about things were terrible last year and, we're in a bad mood about it. It was also, there was a degree of optimism about how it can be better, and evidence perhaps already coming into place that the work to be better, for instance, on the ground attack, and maybe, better rushing attack makes the starts of games a little bit better too. Evidence perhaps already falling into place that some of that stuff is happening. Once again, let's hear from Mike Bobo on that.
As far as the running game, we that's a big emphasis for us. That's the emphasis number one. I don't think anybody, that's not a secret. Coach Smart said it. I said it, I think, the last time I talked to y'all at the Sugar Bowl. We got to be more efficient in the run game. And again, that doesn't mean numbers. We got to run the ball efficiently and find ways to be explosive in the run game, not just the pass game. What I've seen is every day it's an emphasis for us, all right? When we come together as a unit on offense, we're talking about the run game. And a lot of times we think run game means just offensive line, but it's the offensive line, it's the tight ends, it's the running backs, the right reads, hitting the right tracks, it's receivers blocking downfield, it's quarterbacks getting us in the right run, it's quarterbacks on their fakes. And we made an emphasis every day to point out those things when they're good and they're not up to our standard. And day by day, we're working on those things, and and we know that we've got to be able to run the ball, and that's the point of emphasis right now.
Once again, I love it, man. I think it's strong stuff coming from Bobo. It's sort of exactly what I wanted to hear. He also used the word efficiency there on that. That's a word you hear football people and coaches use a lot, and it's one of those things that sort of feels so prevalent that it doesn't have a specific meaning, but it does. And here, if Georgia's an efficient running team, here is how I think your just basic observations can notice this. You don't have to be, Amos Alonzo Stagg to recognize this. You can just see this right there in front of you, kind of in bold print as you're watching the game. Efficiency is measured by what you would call success rate. In other words, if you run the ball on 1st and 10, do you get, I think that Georgia uses 4 yards. Some of the math nerds going to use 5 yards. But either way, if you run the ball on 1st and 10, let's say you need 5 yards for that to be a successful play. You want 4 yards, 5 yards on 1st down. And if you run the ball again on 2nd down, well, if it's 2nd 5, you want half of the available yards before you get a 1st down. You want to get that on 2nd down. So now, if you want to know how efficient Georgia is running it, just pay attention during games. How frequently are you seeing 3rd and 3 or less compared to some sort of longer 3rd down? If you're seeing those very manageable 3rd down situations, then without having a guy go tabulate the numbers for success rate or look up Pro Football Focus or one of these places that kind of makes a living doing that, you can just sort of recognize that yourself. If you're seeing 3rd and manageable, like 3 yards or less on 3rd down, that means that Georgia, when it has run it on early downs, has got enough yards to be successful that all of a sudden now the expected conversion rate on 3rd down is going way up. Does that make sense? That's one of those things I think anybody can easily notice. You don't have to be a calculator or a coach to recognize that when you see it. However, let me give you one final thing here for a moment. I told you a moment ago that if I'm being honest, and look, my intuitions are wrong. You can, wad them up and throw them in the trash as far as I'm concerned. I'm just glad you listen, whether you believe it or not. But I just sort of thought, boy, last week, a little bit media days, just kind of the vibe was just a little bit off. It was just a little bit askew. Something was not quite clicking for me with the preseason conversation around Georgia. And I think for me and many of the Georgia fans that I talk to, as crazy as college football gets these days, people are still as excited about the games as they have ever been. That, we don't know from week to week what the rules are going to be, and we don't know this, we don't know that. It's all a big mess. Sometimes I think it's sort of a mess on purpose by people who secretly want to destroy it. That's a thing that's sort of out there. But either way, thus far, the games themselves are actually just impervious. They are very resilient to the craziness. And as we get close to the fall, I forget all the stuff we worry about during the offseason of how many games in the conference schedule or the NIL or the House settlement or whatever else. And I'm just ready for football. And my readiness for that is just as good as it ever was. And most of the Georgia fans I hear from on a regular basis, for as frustrated as they sometimes get with the overall, messaging around college football, honestly, by the time you get to the midpoint in August, they're just as ready as they've ever been too. And away from, how you run the ball better or how you get off to faster starts. One of the things that Bobo was asked about yesterday, there was that weird stuff that happened months ago about whether or not Bobo might be looking to retire. We obviously know that he has had, some health issues, seems to be really healthy now. Bobo was asked about that yesterday. He probably should have been. He was asked about that yesterday. But in the midst of kind of answering for that rumor, he also gave me the kind of overarching thing that I want to hear from everybody associated with Georgia, that there's never been a better time to be around college football than right now, and there may not have ever been a better opportunity for Georgia on the big stage with the talent that it has and the opportunity that exists. There may never have been a better moment to be a Georgia coach, a player, a Georgia fan than what we're about to experience here in 2025. That desire for optimism, we also got that from Mike Bobo yesterday too.
I feel great. Everybody knows I had some health issues when I was at Colorado State, and I deal some of that with some nerves in my feet. But I feel great, and I'm probably as excited as I've ever been. Not that trying to prove something. I'm excited that college football has changed a little bit. You're coming. You've got a new team. You've got a lot of new guys, and we've got a lot of young guys. We're a young football team. And there's a lot of eager guys that are hungry to learn and hungry to be here and excited to be here. And that gets you fired up as a coach. And when kids don't, they're not excited about being at Georgia or wherever I'm at or playing football for the love of the game, then that's probably when I won't do it. But as far as my health, I feel great. And it's awesome to be here coaching these guys because every day they come over here, they're bright-eyed and they're trying to learn.
So listen, first of all, the fact that Coach Bobo says he's fully healthy, that's great news. I'm happy for that, an answer to many people's prayers. But also the fact that he says, I'm excited about this season as I've ever been. Man, I'm so glad to hear that because I am too. Now, I'm not coaching, I'm not playing, I'm not doing the heavy lifting the program. But my enthusiasm for August 30th and the start of this season and what's going to happen with all these interesting games after that, 10 years of us doing this show here on DawgNation Daily, man, I've never been certainly never been more excited than I am right here at this moment. I'm glad to hear that the Georgia coaches feel the same way. None of this is guaranteed in terms of how it ends. But the fact that the fire, passion, and energy that Georgia says it wants from its players, that Mike Bobo says he has personally, I take that as a pretty good sign for what could be in store for all of us later on this fall. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Merriweather and Tharp. We are glad you were with us. No matter how you're getting here, video, of course, live 10 a.m., on demand after that, radio noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rev, podcast wherever you find them, Apple, Spotify, worldfamousdawgnation.com. Just thrilled that you found a platform that works for you. And over the course of these now 10 years doing this show, very, very thankful that whether you've been with us for 10 days or all 10 of these years, we're just thankful that you're a part of what we do here. And so thankful to our great sponsors who make it all possible there as well, including our friends at Merriweather and Tharp, your source for Georgia divorce. And I'll tell you this right now, y'all. I'd give anything if there was no such thing as divorce. I really would. I would love to live in a world where that was not the case. But here's the thing. We also, no matter what our preference would be, our ideal situation in life would be, we also have moments where we're forced to confront reality. And for some of you, the divorce process is just reality. You may have done everything you could do to avoid it, but now it's just a thing that's going to happen. And obviously, if that's your circumstances, well, the only choice you have is to be ready for it and to learn as much as you can about it. Be equipped with the information that allow you to make the best decisions here moving forward. And that's where our friends at Merriweather and Tharp can step in. You got questions about the divorce process? Trust me when I tell you they have answers. And the good news is that's now true all across the great state of Georgia. We have a wide-ranging audience that shows up from, all over the world, really, but certainly all across Georgia. New office just opened in Columbus, Savannah, Peachtree City, Macon, Carrollton, Athens. I'm sure I'm leaving some out. But, fast growing with offices all across the state. When I say that, these are attorneys that are embedded in these communities. They know the local courts. They know the local judges. They know the lay of the land. And there's just sort of an institutional knowledge that's gained by being local that gives you just sort of a better way to kind of navigate the process. That's what Merriweather and Tharp provides. So I want you to find them online. It's GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. GeorgiaDivorceTeam.com. Merriweather and Tharp is your source for Georgia divorce. All right, great to have you on the program here today. Let me do a couple of things. So let me start with the programming note. So we got a lot coming up, including Terrence Edwards here in just a little bit. And a really fun Around the Doghouse you're going to love in a second too, which is kind of a little bit of an example of a prediction that I made on the show the other day that apparently has come true in a pretty fun way. We'll give that to you. Georgia fans having a big reaction to something that Georgia shared this week. All of this is coming up in a second. You're going to really like this. But around here, obviously, I love Georgia football, and I love talking about Georgia football each and every day. But in addition to that, I also think of myself as hopefully a really big advocate for high school football in our state, whether the players we're talking about are going to Georgia or not. I just love high school football in Georgia. I'm thrilled next week to be a part of the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic on television, including the games on Saturday being on Atlanta News First from Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I try to entrench myself as deeply as I can in Georgia high school football. It's just something I'm really proud of. Well, in that spirit, later on today, our good friend Cody Chafin's going to team up with me on this show. We're going to reveal the AJC Super 11 here for 2025. Our partners at the AJC, this is a long-standing tradition recognizing some of the very best high school football players in our state. It's a great who's who when you look back through time, and this year's list is very impressive, as you would imagine. It certainly touches on a good number of Georgia commits here, too. So all of that really fun. Cody Chafin's had a chance to shoot some video of these guys earlier this week. That's why we're going to bring on Cody as a part of this. We're going to do that before we're done today. A great honor for some tremendous Georgia high school football players going into their senior years. We will give that to you here in just a little bit. Also, very quick, let me remind you, Tickets still remain, but they're going fast for our DawgNation Invasion on the Tennessee River coming up in Knoxville in just a few weeks' time. Georgia travels to Tennessee in September. We want you to be there. While supplies last, we want you to get one of those DawgNation Invasion t-shirts. You're going to be one of the first, 125 to sign up for that. We're getting right close to that number here, so act fast on that. Enjoy your time on the riverboat. It's for a couple of hours sailing up and down the Tennessee River. Gorgeous views, great food on board. You got the drink tickets to enjoy the bar. All of that included in your price. DawgNation shows, DawgNation team hanging out, talking a bunch of trash about those Tennessee Vols. You better believe we're going to be doing a lot of that. Y'all, this is one of the most fun things that DawgNation's ever done. Back in 2023, we did this for the first time, and it's probably the thing we've heard as much feedback almost as anything. I've got to come back and do that again. So this year for 2025, that's what we're doing. Find out more online. It is DawgNation.com/tailgate. That is DawgNation.com/tailgate. For more on that today. Can't wait to see you on the DawgNation Invasion on the Tennessee River. All right, before we get Terrence Edwards, a lot to do with Terrence here today. Let's go around the doghouse presented by our friends at Daytona Beach. Now, at the risk of being self-serving, I want to go back in time to, what was it, exactly a week ago maybe? We were talking about my rules for interpreting Georgia fall camp rumors. And one of the things I said is, oftentimes good news will leak, bad news rarely does. If you pay attention to the rumor mill the last few days, that's once again been confirmed to be true. That's just the way things operate. But in addition to that, you may remember I said, hey, sometimes if the good news leaking out of Georgia fall camp is good enough, we may see Georgia do something a little bit special as it relates to that. Let me give you a reminder how I said this on DawgNation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp last week, because this was a prediction that apparently has come true. Take a listen to this from last week. Do you remember, this was from a scrimmage. This would have been the year prior, 2019. Like George Pickens makes this amazing one-handed catch during a scrimmage, like really one of the great feats of athleticism you've probably ever seen. And sort of magically, this video, grainy, kind of like, it's almost like a UFO film. You know, it's like our technology keeps getting better and better, but the quality of our UFO videos never seems to improve, some would say. The George Pickens one-handed catch, many of you remember this. It's an amazing catch. It's almost made more amazing by how, like, out of focus and grainy the video of it all is, but somehow that video magically appeared on the internet. We know that a Georgia staffer in an unauthorized capacity putting video on the internet of a Georgia scrimmage or practice, it'd be worse than fired, right? I mean, whatever beyond fired is, that's what would probably happen there. So when these little videos have sort of snuck onto the internet, we would suspect that somehow, some way, that was kind of ushered along by somebody in some sort of mysterious set of circumstances. This sort of magically arrived to us. And perhaps maybe that'll happen again this year as some sort of Easter egg. If you find it, you find it. And if you know, one of those things of, ooh, look at this. So-and-so did something really, really good at practice. So that was my prediction last week, that if the video is good enough, maybe George will show us something. And do y'all remember the Pickens video from 2019 where it's like a scrimmage? You're not supposed to have any photos or videos for the sort of landed gentry in the building to get a chance to watch that. You're not supposed to have any photos or video. And yet somehow this video of Pickens making this wild one-handed catch where his body's going this way, arm kind of comes back the other way. It's honestly made to this day still be the best single catch Pickens has ever made. Kind of came in its sort of first moment of Georgia uniform, and this very, very grainy video sort of showed up on the internet, became this kind of phenomenon among Georgia fans. And what I said last week was, hey, maybe if there's a moment at Georgia practice that's that good, maybe we'll see something like that again. Well, I'm happy to report that maybe we have an example of that, because I tell you what, there was a thing that Georgia shared on video this week that has gotten a huge reaction. So Georgia does this video of the stuff that's kind of going on at practice. And I always like when they do this because, you know, videos are just more exciting. The pace of the video just seems more energetic. And our guy Cody Chavins does a great job with this stuff. The more you do like edits, you know, you do quick edits, it just makes the video seem more frantic, which kind of increases the energy level of the video. Well, and Georgia does a good job with that, but it's also becomes this sort of mystery of who do I see, who's wearing the blue caps, as sort of showing fire, passion, and energy. Everybody's sort of trying to like go through frame by frame to see what they notice. Well, y'all, and I had people hit me up. Our guy Wyatt Filton hit me up about this. Other people were mentioning this. It's been a big topic on social media. There is a moment in this video, a little different than the George Pickens wild one-handed catch, but there's a moment involving Zachariah Branch that is just, to me, awe-inspiring. I don't know if we have this particular frame to show. Watch the cut that Branch does. His body is going, 100 miles an hour to the left, hard cut back to the right. Whoever, in this case, it's just a staffer that's defending him. But nonetheless, the movement here is violent enough that he's going to shake whoever is defending him. That is the level of lateral quickness that Zachariah Branch is bringing to the table. It was contained like just a couple of frames within an otherwise, Georgia practice video. Look at that movement from Zachariah Branch. And to me, that's the sort of thing that, we think of Georgia being like super serious and everybody's like Mr. Football around there. But these are also behind the scenes guys who just like the game. They like the athleticism of their players. And they are kind of cool to show some of it off, even though they really don't have to. They would be within their rights to keep it all locked down. But in this particular case, they let this little Zachariah Branch thing sort of slip onto the internet here. Not quite the same thing as a Pickens one-handed catch. But for those of you who like to let your mind wander, that sort of movement, that sort of stutter step, that sort of ability to change directions, does that feel like the sort of thing that Zachariah Branch could use to good effect during a game this fall? I would suggest that he possibly could. Now, to wrap this up, let's also go back to one more thing that Mike Bobo said. He was asked about the arrival of Branch and Noah Thomas and the presence that these transfer receivers can give to the overall attempt to upgrade the Georgia wide receiver room. This is Bobo on the subject of wide receivers such as Branch yesterday.
First of all, right now, I think we've got great competition at all the skill spots, at tight end, at running back, at receiver. We brought a lot of guys in. You mentioned the portal guys, but the freshmen at those positions too have provided unbelievable competition. And that's what Coach Smart has built this program around, is competition and building depth. And I like those guys. A lot of them are young, but they're willing and they're eager. And you got to figure out, where we're going to put these guys to get them in the right spot and figure out ways that, sometimes, in the past we've kind of let the offense run through the quarterback, and he takes, the guy that the defense gives us on maybe a passing concept. But we're going to have to figure out ways to get some of these guys that you mentioned, generate touches for those guys.
It's the point at the end that's so interesting, and it's actually something we talked to Terrence Edwards about last week. Hey, instead of being quarterback driven where he's just sort of distributing the football wherever, you got to reverse engineer this and say, for guys like Branch, how do we make sure they get the right amount of touches? That's interesting. We'll talk to Terrence Edwards more about that in a minute. But for now, let me make that Around the Doghouse, presented today by our friends at Daytona Beach. And of course, we're coming up on kind of the end of summer here. But before the summer comes to a close, there's still time for you to take a beach vacation. And if you've been derelict in your duties in terms of planning that beach vacation, the good news is there are still plenty of great hotels, wonderful resorts, and an opportunity for great savings with our friends at Daytona Beach. 23 miles of shoreline, airport to fly to that makes it super convenient, great restaurants, great surfing, fishing, golf, all kinds of outdoor activities. A wonderful summertime beach experience can be coming your way. So check out DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals for more on that. That is DaytonaBeach.com/hotel deals for more on that today. All right, we got the AJC Super 11 announcement coming up here in a little bit. We'll unveil those and promote that. Our guy Cody Chavin's going to help us out with that. Injury to an SEC quarterback. What's the truth about that? That comes up here in a minute too. But for now, on everything, including what Mike Bobo just said about wide receivers, let's talk to Terrence Edwards here today on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, great stuff. Terrence Edwards, always appreciate him, and I'm always thankful for Terrence's time. Last week we talked about a little bit of, the difference between quarterback kind of going wherever, basically throwing wherever the ball dictates and, kind of making the decision to get the right guys the touches. Terrence, I do think it's interesting at the end of that clip we just heard from Mike Bobo where he says, hey, instead of being quarterback driven and letting him just sort of spread it around, we got to look at the guys who need touches. I'm paraphrasing here, and make sure basically that they get the right amount. I think that's a really good way to run an offense. And when you see moves like we just saw from Zachariah Branch, I think it becomes easy to understand why Georgia would want to get those guys as involved as they could. Would you agree with that?
I didn't hear the first part of your question. I think it cut out.
Yeah, just talking about Mike Bobo saying that he wants to make sure the right wide receivers get the right number of touches this fall, basically.
Yes, I just think if, you believe in the guys that you have brought in, even if it's portal guys or freshman guys, and you understand their abilities, you put them in the right situations to get them the ball. And if you just look at Zachariah Branch, he's just a lightning in a bottle. So you try to get him the balls in any kind of way, shape, form. Noah Thomas is a 6'6" wide receiver on the edge. So he's a guy that's a quarterback best friend, just being able to throw back shoulders, just being able to throw fade balls, knowing that you got a guy that's 6'6" on the edge. And Kobe Young is another guy that I thought was a big piece that we missed last year, and he played well in the spring game. So I think this group here is talented and deep, and I'm looking forward to seeing these guys. I really think this group is going to have a chip on their shoulder, just the way that they were talked about last year, and rightfully so. We did have a lot of drops, but I think this group will redeem themselves this year and be a strength of this team.
We showed a little video clip before you joined us of Zachariah Branch making an amazing move during practice. Now, he's doing it against a staffer, so it's not, obviously in a scrimmage or even in a game. But when you see that sort of ability to kind of make the really harsh, violent cut, you're going 100 miles an hour, to the left side, and then you, boom, on a dime, are now going back right. Terrence, this is the sort of thing, as some of our commenters have said, in a video game, that's essentially unstoppable. It's the sort of lateral quickness that you just can't get too much of on a football field, right?
Right. I mean, if you just look at the video that I'm watching, we always talk about indicators, not giving the defensive back indicators that you're about to break down. And you can see he was violently going in one direction and violently changed directions. And if that's on a staffer or a defender, that's a perfect route. That is a great route to get in and out of your cut and get out. And that's some of the things that we're going to be able to use him on some of these change of direction routes, return routes, whip routes. So I'm excited to see him in space and being lined up against probably a nickel that's not used to covering these type of receivers. And if you just look at the video, that's what he brings to the table is his change of direction ability.
Obviously, neither one of us live in Los Angeles, so we don't know. But when you see what Zachariah Branch kind of showed the beginning of his college career, then it doesn't quite match that in USC the rest of the time. And sometimes you sort of wonder, oh, is he a knucklehead or something like that? But then you hear him speak during spring, you're like, no, this is like salt of the earth. Sounds like a great dude, really mature. He and Zion both, his brother now on the Georgia team too, I think they've earned a lot of respect from teammates really quickly based on what I've heard. So, clearly the intangible boxes are getting checked in the right way. And now he's kind of coming to Georgia to try to be more than he was at a place like USC. Do you have any opinion that's sort of maybe better than I could form about how come an athlete like this, who did show flashes, never quite put it on display fully and completely at a place like USC that typically kind of caters to wide receivers?
Right. I mean, you can't really talk about the scheme because Lincoln Riley is one of the best play callers that we have in the game. And sometimes just a change of scenery can just do wonders for players. Just maybe Los Angeles just wasn't a great place for him socially. Like, you just never know what an athlete is going through outside of football. We only see what we see on the field, but there's a lot of other factors that goes along with the performance of athletes, and it's just not just your natural ability. I mean, if we just think about all the day-to-day lives, you just don't know some of the pressures that the athletes have to live up to, schoolwork, it's just a lot of things. So I just hope that he has a fresh start and we can see the Zachariah Branch that I saw at Bishop Gorman that I thought would be one of the top slot receivers in the game. And I still think that highly of him.
So I would say that Zachariah Branch, to most of our audience, probably a little bit more famous than Noah Thomas. Branch was the high-rated recruit, a guy that sort of played the big national title, national television games, I mean to say. Thomas put up nice numbers at Texas A&M, but probably not in as notable of a way. But Terrence, I'm always trying to fish for whatever rumor, secret I can get. I'm always trying to get something out of somebody. And I'll tell you this, ever since Noah came here, I'm talking about going back to like, say, January, February, pre-spring practice, winter workouts, Terrence, there are people who just rave about him. He's 6'6", sounds like his work ethic is everything you would ever want it to be. Probably a better athlete than people realize. I think that sometimes people have a tendency to think the Texas A&M players are slow. A&M just sort of looks slow on the field to me sometimes. I think that Thomas is a better athlete than people realize. There are a lot of people, Terrence, who really like Noah Thomas a lot. Have you had much chance to pay attention to him or any kind of interaction? Is there anything that sort of jumps out to you about Noah Thomas as to why the praise for him kind of behind the scenes and in hushed tones has been as consistent as it's been?
Yes, I went down and watched practice and didn't get opportunity to talk to him, just saw him. And when you see the young man in person, he is tall. He is legit 6'6", and I just think just having a weapon like this, and we don't understand how great it can be if we can really connect on back shoulder fades with this young man. I just think when Javon Williams was there and those taller big bodies was there. I can't remember the receiver that came from Miami a couple years ago. We throw a lot of back shoulder fades to him because those are big, tall wide receivers. And I just think if we can use what God-given talent he has, and that's being 6'6" with long arms, that's a weapon. And you can never defend a perfect back shoulder throw. And that's what I'm excited to see.
So you mentioned Colby Young a little earlier. Young and Thomas to me feel like similar players. Is there a room for both of them to have big seasons, or is this a situation because they do kind of fill similar roles that, well, if one guy's really getting a lot of touches and a lot of stats, then that might have to come at the other player's expense?
No, I don't think so. I just think, in a perfect world, I really believe that if, Noah could play Z and Colby could play X, you got, I think this would be the biggest wide receiver crew in Georgia history, having a 6'6" and a 6'4" true wide receivers in the middle. And I really think, especially if I know we're a lot of 11 personnel, that's 3 receiver, 1 tight end, 1 back. But if we ever get into some 10 personnel, so having Zachariah and Dylan Bell in the slots with those 2 guys on the outside, that's just I believe that's a formula that can win. But I don't know what the depth chart is going to be, but having 2 giants out there just bodes well for an inexperienced quarterback where we could give those guys just an opportunity to go up and use your size and your body to make back shoulder or just jump ball fade balls. And we have to have those. We have to use those, in my opinion, because those 2 guys are so big.
So let me get deep in the weeds for a second, I guess sort of football 101 stuff. So you said this makes me think about this. So, you do like the sort of 3-by-1, type look every now and then where you got 1 receiver in the game and, I guess the 3 receivers. So if Georgia wants to use 2 tight end sets, does that mean that Zachariah Branch got to come off? Is this going to be a situation where it's like it's either Lucky or Branch in the game, and you're kind of making that decision between whoever you think your second tight end is and kind of that other receiver in that situation?
Yes, if we've been notorious for running what we call 12 personnel. That's 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, 1 back, and you have to bring off. It just depends on the game plan for that week. It depends on the opponent. It depends on who you feel gives you the best chance for a favorable matchup that week. So I can't sit here and say who would come on, who would come off. We may have a better matchup with the 2 bigger receivers in one week. We may have a favorable matchup with Zachariah Branch in on 12 personnel. So it's a week-by-week thing. It's a game plan thing. So I can't sit here and say who will come off and who will come in. Just depends on who has a favorable matchup that week.
So I want to finish with this, and I think this is one of those things where, and I would never pretend to, obviously a broadcaster, I don't do what you do as a coach, what Mike Bobo does. as the Georgia offensive coordinator. But when I hear Bobo in a clip we played a little earlier say, boy, my energy level's as high as it's been. I'm as excited for the season as I've ever been. That sort of means something to me. And, I kind of find myself, next week we got games on TV. It's every weekend after that between now and February. And I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But when you start with it, and I'm asking you this because you know this too, because you're kind of going through that with scrimmage last week. You're practicing, you're getting ready for your own season. As a professional who does this for a living, you do have to gut check yourself, right? You have to say, is my energy level where it needs to be now, so that when I do get depleted as the season goes on, people get on my nerves. I get frustrated because things are not going well. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not eating as well as I could. All of these things are just sort of natural, sort of human conditions that happen in a busy time, that I still have enough energy in the reservoir to get me through this. So when Mike Bobo says I'm as energized as I've ever been, I take that as a good thing. That's what I kind of want my coach to be, because if you have any question about any of that going into the season in GMI, you are not going to make it, right?
Yes, energy is contagious. That's what I tell my team all the time. I always say to them, match my energy, because I'm going to bring it every day. Football and sports is an outlet, and practice is an outlet. No matter what's going on in the outside world, for these 3 hours during the game, or these 2 hours and a half during practice, if you can focus on your task at hand, football wise, and worry about the outside influences after you get done with that practice or that game, you just be better off. And I've known Coach Bobo for a long time. He is a competitor. He's a quarterback. So I'm pretty sure he looked at himself in the mirror this offseason. He did some self-evaluating, and he's going to come back in with that energy and the passion that I've known him have even before he got to Georgia. So I'm excited to see his energy level this year. And I know that if he says he feels great, then I believe him. I saw him recently, and he's still the funny, laughing guy that I've known since I was 8 years old. So I'm excited to see this offense. I'm excited to see him as a play caller this year. I'm excited to see him as a coach. And I'm glad that he told everyone that his energy level is as high as it could be, because I believe it, because I've seen it.
I love to hear that, Terrence. That's so awesome. And obviously, as you always tell us, Terrence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy, you're busy right now, season beginning, but you've still got your mind on that next generation of pass catchers too. And we just had the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic luncheon last week, and obviously looking at the great tackle football teams in Georgia, something that I'm very close to. But flag football in Georgia continues to grow. There were a number of teams highlighted the luncheon last week for that fast-growing sport, and the next generation of flag football players, the girls that play that, you're now working with them too. So for people who want to connect with the Terrence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy, how can they do so?
Yes, you can find me on all social media platforms at Terrence Edwards Wide Receiver Academy. And I'm so excited to start working with the young ladies because the game has exploded. So I'm ready to start working with those athletes to just help them along their journey, as I've done young men playing the game of football.
Terrence, great stuff. I love it. I appreciate your insight. Nobody knows it better. And, of course, your passion always strong for the game there, too. So enjoy the weekend coming up here as you guys continue to get ready for the upcoming season. And we'll see you very soon back here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp as well.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, Terrence.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
In 10 years of doing this show, I don't take it for granted that talk to a guy like Terrence who just talked to Mike Bobo. He said, yeah, I talked to Coach Bobo the other day. I can attest, energy level right where it needs to be. Insight on the receivers, having watched practice, that's a lot of valuable information. Terrence does a good job of sharing with us. And I'll just be completely honest. The whole discussion about, having a lot of energy and things like that, that's sort of a personal thing for me here too. And as I mentioned, I don't put myself in the same category of Terrence who's out there grinding a practice every day, or certainly Mike Bobo leading the Georgia offense. But we're about to have a busy run through the season. For whatever reason, I don't know what this is. I've just been a little bit under the weather the last couple of days. And, in 10 years of doing this show, something I am proud of, in 10 years of doing this show, 10 years, 5 days a week, I've had one sick day. Now, some of y'all would say I've taken 2,000 cruises, but just one sick day. And so I don't like to slow down, don't like to be sick, but I've been a little bit like, I don't know, under the weather or something the last couple of days, just trying to like sort of shake that off. Because I mean, it's go time, right? We got games next week, got a bunch of stuff to do. So kind of finding that requisite energy level, really important thing. And coaches like Terrence Edwards certainly understand what that is all about. Speaking of high school football, we're only a couple of minutes away from our unveiling here on this show, a shout out and celebration for the AJC Super 11 here for 2025. The 11 top players in the state as tabulated by those who do this for our friends and partners with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Prior to that, though, let's get ready to go cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. As I said before, only one sick day, lots of cruises, and I try to take as many of those as I can. And boy, my advice to you would be do the exact same thing. And we've got some new video that we're showing for you here. I love, if you're watching a video, what you're seeing right now. Like, this is the Mason Jar. And Mason Jar is on Utopia of the Seas. It's on Wonder of the Seas. The various specialty restaurants are on a collection of ships, and not every restaurant is on every ship, just to give you a little bit of a variety when you sail the different ships. The Mason Jar, though, is one of my absolute favorite. Of course, I'm as Southern as the day is long, and this is Southern-themed food. You see chicken and waffles right there. How much do you love all of that? The bar also has very nice bourbon cocktails. Admittedly, I do enjoy one or two of those every now and then. And also in the bar, I'm talking about playing till late in the night. They have an awesome live music country band. This thing will be going to 2 a.m. some nights. It's one of the spots you can almost always find me and whoever I happen to be with on board a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. About as much fun as you can ever have. In fact, Jessica Slater knows all about that. She and I probably hung out together a few times there in the Mason Jar. So if you want to find out about the ships that have Mason Jars, such as Utopia of the Seas or other fun specialty restaurants and entertainment venues and great bars with delicious cocktails, Jessica can tell you all about that. Give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com. She can tell you a lot more about that today. Hope to see you on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation sometime in the very near future, including our DawgNation cruise coming up in April. All right, big rumor in the SEC yesterday. So apparently, and I'll tell you a quick story. So I'm not a writer by trade. I work with writers. And when I first came to work for this organization many years ago, like I said, I said this the other day, I'm not smart, but I am curious. And so I would spend a lot of time talking to what you call copy editors. Copy editors are people who check the work and sort of decide if it looks okay. And one of the things that copy editors, this is sort of going back a few years. I don't know how much of this there still is, but going back a few years, one of the things that copy editors were really big on is word choice. Like I said, I'm curious, so I'm interested in that sort of thing. And an overused phrase sometimes in sports is so-and-so suffered an injury. And the point of the copy editors was, listen, you need to say suffered for a serious injury. Guy gets carted off the field, that's suffered. If it's a minor injury, he didn't suffer the injury, he sustained the injury, I should say. And that's one of those things that may seem like small, but it does, I think, provide better meaning. And I've always kind of kept that in mind. Well, yesterday, instead of suffering an injury, Garrett Nussmeier, the LSU quarterback, apparently sustained an injury. There was all kinds of crazy rumors that, Nussmeier had left practice with an injury. People were obviously up in arms about what had caused this injury, how serious it was. So much so that LSU, through back channels, had to sort of quiet all of this down. And here's what I'm going to do for a moment, just for a couple quick seconds, up onto a soapbox, and I'll hop right back down. I want to defend LSU fans for a second, because this is a thing that I feel like happens a lot, where fans, by and large, are a pretty soft target for criticism. There is a risk associated with criticizing a coach or a player. There's backlash to that. There's no organized backlash for the most part when you criticize fans. So oftentimes you see sports takes that are kind of angled as a way to be critical of fans, because that's a way to kind of give a hot take without having a whole lot of risk associated with it, because fans, for the most part, can't really do anything to you. If you criticize a coach or a player, they do have some way of getting their revenge. And so therefore, you see a lot of that sort of thing. And once you notice it, you kind of can't help but see it. I think yesterday's another example of this. So you have what turned out to be, we're told, a minor injury for Nussmeier. big reaction from fans. And the way this story kind of got covered and spun, and listen, none of us are LSU fans, at least for the most part, so we don't necessarily, it's their job to defend themselves, but I'm going to defend them here just a little bit. So when the rumor comes out, and these sorts of rumors are going to get out, folks, it just happens. When the rumor comes out that Nussmeier left practice with an injury, I would say that the fan reaction to that was the exact same thing as the LSU coach reaction to that, or maybe other LSU players. Of course, that is a huge deal, and all anybody wants to know is the severity of that injury. Fans are no different. It seems more hysterical because there are more fans than there are coaches and players, and so therefore the reaction seems louder, but the reaction itself is still within the boundaries of what it should be if you're one of the top favorites for the Heisman Trophy quarterback goes down with a preseason injury. All you want to know is how hurt he is. Well, as it turns out, perhaps not all that serious. And the reason why this sort of bothers me a little bit is because you sort of see this a lot in sports. And once you kind of recognize this in sports, you sort of recognize this in other areas of life. That there's a tendency to sort of want to manage crowds by controlling the flow of information. In other words, this rumor shouldn't have got out because now everybody's all fired up, hot and bothered, but the Nussmeier injury. And so you had a lot of people kind of working to put this fire out around LSU yesterday when really nobody knew how severe the injury was. And the fan reaction, I would say, was kind of reasonable. If your franchise quarterback goes down, yes, that is a really big deal. So there's more I could say about this. I'm going to stop right there. I think that sometimes fans get a bad rap. The rumor was true, and that Nussmeier apparently did leave practice. The injury itself, though, we're told, not serious. But this idea that this information needs to conceal to control the reaction, honestly, the best way to control the reaction is to not withhold information. It's to sort of tell everything that you do know. And college football teams, I would say, consistently get that wrong. Let me also mention this quickly. Today is, I guess, decision day for the 5-star in the class of 2027, the edge rusher LaDainian Guyton, defensive line edge rusher, one of the best players in the class for the upcoming cycle. Now, a couple of pieces of information here. First of all, you'll remember Guyton a year ago playing for Savannah Christian, teammates with Elijah Griffin, who's now at Georgia. Since then, Guyton has also been on the move too. Guyton is now at Benedictine. That's another Savannah area private school and a very good one, multi-time state champion. Guyton has moved to Benedictine. So if you're just sort of keeping up with all this, that's a piece of information to know. It is largely believed, I think today when Guyton makes his choice, he's not going to choose Georgia. I think people think he's going to choose Texas Tech just based on the chatter that has been out there. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why this isn't getting a lot of talk. You probably haven't seen a ton about this. It's going to happen. I would say it's a weird time for a 2027 prospect to announce his commitment. I would say the timing of this kind of sort of lessens the overall chatter, maybe. Two things I will tell you. One of these things I think you already know, which is whatever Guyton does today, my assumption is this recruitment is going to be ongoing. In fact, as I mentioned to Terrence, I'm always trying to talk to people who know more than I do, or who know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows more than I do. And in talking to people who are a little closer to this situation, the sense that I get is that at one point in time, the pursuit of a program like Texas Tech, big NIL dollars, was serious enough that maybe that ship would just sail, that Guyton was going to go to Lubbock and play college football for an exorbitant fee. It seems like lately the chatter may have been a little bit more positive that Georgia could eventually win this recruitment, although I guess my hunch is it probably doesn't win it today. All of this is just speculation, hopefully not too reckless, but that's the speculation that's out there, that maybe Guyton chooses somewhere else today, maybe he sticks with that choice throughout the long haul, or maybe there's still a chance to kind of win this from the back end. I don't think this story is done based on whatever LaDainian Guyton, truly one of the best players in Georgia for the next cycle, if not the best, gets ready to make the first of what might be a series of college announcements involving his recruitment. We'll follow that. And we'll make that cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, also, speaking of great recruits and great high school football players, want to get ready to bring on a special guest today to help me kind of unveil a really fun announcement from our friends at the AJC involving the AJC Super 11. Now, as I mentioned a little earlier in the show, I love talking Georgia football with you each and every day. That is my day job. But my passion in addition to that is I like to think of myself, hopefully, as a strong advocate for high school football in Georgia, celebrating the best of the sport in this state. That's something I take very seriously. And with that in mind, I love all of the great traditions associated with high school football in Georgia. And one of those, certainly at the top of the list, is the AJC Super 11. It has existed for a very long time. And if you go back, in fact, if you go online to AJC.com, you can see this for yourself, kind of a look back through the years at those who've been an AJC Super 11, those from the AJC Super 11 still in the NFL now, those who've come to Georgia. It obviously kind of stands as a who's who of our historic past in the state when it comes to Georgia high school football. We expect this year's list to be no different. So let me bring in Cody Chaffins here. Cody's one of our great producers, also a tremendous videographer, if you want to call him that. And Cody got a chance to spend time with each of our AJC Super 11 honorees over the course of the last few days. So, Cody, first of all, thanks for being a part of the show. And we're going to unveil a lot of these names and kind of talk a little bit about it, especially as it kind of relates to the Georgia part of this. But I know that you are, first of all, sort of just like me. You know, we do Georgia football for a living, and I'm proud of it. I love Georgia high school football, and I would want to spend as much time around that as I could, whether I got paid for it or not. So, given your history when it comes to Georgia high school football, including a Georgia high school football player, how much fun was it for you to once again this year spend time the way you did with these AJC Super 11 players for this season?
It was so much fun. I love high school football. Like you said, played my high school football, Chamblee High School growing up. And then I've covered high school football in this state for 20 years now. So for me to be able to go out and be a part of this AJC Super 11, which for me, you know, some of the kids who are on the list this year, admittedly, don't understand the full history. This is the 40th year that AJC has done AJC Super 11, which I turned 40 this year. So it's been around my entire life. And I remember the feeling in high school when you were waiting for the list to come out, right? Like there was this, who's it going to be? Who are the 11 guys? Because it's the top 11 high school players around the state of Georgia. Who's it going to be? Who's going to be it this year? Now, I feel like nowadays there are so many lists that these kids are on from the time they're in sixth grade on that maybe it kind of it gets lost in the shuffle. Yeah. But for guys like me, this is the OG list. And when that used to come out, AJC Super 11, it wasn't coming out online when we were looking for it. We were waiting to see the paper, and you would see all 11 pictures. It was always a thrill. So for me to get out and get to these high school programs, get that smell of a high school locker room again, there's something about that smell and the smell of fresh cut grass that just takes you back immediately. That was so much fun.
Yeah, I think there are two things among many that make this a really fun list. A, the prestige of it is protected by the fact there are only 11 of these, right? That's a small number given how many great players exist in our state. So to be among the 11, the scarcity of that protects the prestige, which I think is really important. And as you said, 40 years of this, that by many decades kind of sort of predates the recruiting era as we kind of know it now, where there are all kinds of lists and things like that. Very few lists involving high school football in Georgia or anywhere else are going to date back 40 years. So once again, the prestige well earned by the longevity of this particular honor. So without further ado, let's show this on the screen and kind of roll through these names, celebrate them, and then we'll talk about a few of these here in particular. And of course, you can check out AJC.com to see more of this. No surprise that Tyler Atkinson makes the AJC Super 11 this year. Georgia commit Kamari Brooks, Georgia commit Craig Dandridge, all showing up as members of the AJC Super 11. Jordan Edmonds from out of Sprayberry, the Alabama commit, very impressive defensive back. Deuce Geralds shows up here. Tyreek Green, we had a chance to broadcast his commitment ceremony just the other day. Certainly a very good one. An AJC Super 11. Aaron Gregory, got a chance to spend some time with Mr. Gregory earlier this week at the Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic Luncheon. Love seeing him and love the things that he's doing for Douglas County. A terrific wide receiver showing up here as an AJC Super 11. My hometown of Gainesville, Georgia, well represented by Xavier Griffin, the linebacker from Gainesville, and a recent commitment to Alabama. Great to see that. Five-star tight end Caden Prothrow, also a Georgia commit, a part of the state championship program there at Bowdoin. A member of our AJC AJC Super 11. And then winding it down with Janez Walton from Central Carrollton, and of course from Jonesboro, Jontavius Wyman, the final members of our AJC Super 11 here for 2025. Absolutely as distinguished a list you're going to see. And frankly, I'd put that Super 11 from our state up against basically any grouping of any state in the country, especially if you start bringing per capita into it all, from a population standpoint. But obviously, Cody, for our audience, it's guys like Dandridge and Green and certainly Prothrow. And Kamari Brooks. It's the Georgia commits that probably stand out on this list. You spent time with them. What did you learn from these guys as you had a chance to be with them here in recent days?
First off, it was so fun to actually we've heard Jeff Sentell talk about these guys for years now. And I've seen interviews, but to meet these guys in person was really cool. The things that stuck out to me. So we're looking at Craig Dandridge, if you're watching on video here, Cambridge wide receiver. He's one of those guys, I didn't realize he had broken his wrist. He broke other bones, so he didn't play a lot. We noticed he came on the radar super late and didn't get his Georgia offer until November of last year. He was dealing with broken bones. He said that made him a tougher guy off the field. The other thing, so I'm the person who shot the video that you're looking at right now. When you stand in front of him, he was taller than I thought he would be. And then just the explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. It's one of those things. I've never played outside on the anyway. I was a fat offensive lineman, but watching him just shake me and go around, you realize that, I would have no chance trying to stop a guy like this. A coach up there at Cambridge really loves his hops as well. So that's Craig Dandridge, as good a dude as we thought he would be. Yeah. Really, really great interview. I asked him also, I'll drop one more note on Craig Dandridge. I asked him, hey, when you think Georgia wide receiver, what do you think? He goes, Pickens. Then he dropped Terrence Edwards.
I love that.
And then he said Reggie Brown. Reggie Brown has been coaching him a little bit.
Okay.
So he's got the reverence for the history of Georgia football, which is always going to be a plus in my book. Went to Buford. This is Ty Boogie Green. Again, a guy we saw commit live on DawgNation. And that's kind of all I knew about him was we watched him at this downtown Atlanta restaurant do his commitment. His mom was there, his aunt as well. So it was really fun to meet them. And, he's at Buford, which, by the way, we got to drive by the new stadium.
How about that?
In their equipment room is where we shot the interview. It's as impressive as anything. The one thing about Ty Boogie that you realize is, he is pure athlete. He's going to take kicks back. He's also going to be running back for Buford. And then, oh, by the way, this position that Georgia's recruited him at DB. Like him a lot, found out little details about him. I'm going to do some more of this on Before the Hedges. I'm filling in for Kaylee next week, and Jeff and I are going to share some of this. I'll quickly run through the other two Georgia guys if we've got a minute. Caden Prothrow, huge human being. Really excited to meet him, and he is a country boy. He wants to be barefoot and fishing somewhere.
I love it.
And he didn't make any bones about that. Got to meet his dad, which was really cool. The other thing, finding out stories from his dad was he plays at Bowden, right, which is Class A football in Georgia, smallest classification. He's in Carroll County, down the street from a football powerhouse at Carrollton, not far from where another Super 11 guy, Aaron Gregory, goes at Douglasville. He said, yes, he has heard from friends of all of those programs. He stayed loyal to Bowden High School, his hometown where he grew up, where his dad won a state championship. He has now won multiple state championships. And so that, to me, really stuck out, the loyalty that Caden Prothrow always showed and how much he accepts being this role model in this small town in Georgia is really, really cool. Final guy, Kamari Brooks. Kamari, 6'6", and so he was every bit of it. I called one of his games for Georgia Public Broadcasting last year. Okay. 6'4", Caden's 6'6", but he just feels very large and those big hands. He's a great tight end as well. I got to meet his mom, who had a special shirt she had made, and just finding out. I asked him about his relationship with David Pollock, because that's the thing everybody knows about Kamari Brooks is he's coached. He said actually Pollock is not his position coach at outside linebacker, and he said he does. I asked him, is that relationship more talking X's and O's? Is it more your mentality? He said no, it's legit X's and O's. Pollock's telling him hand placement, footwork, all of those things are things that they're working on. So it's really cool to meet these guys and their families for the most part. And Kamari, of course, right down the road from Athens. So he's excited that his grandma, who apparently is very loud at games, will be able to watch him and be in Sanford Stadium.
So let me just say one more thing about this real quick, and then I'll let you go, Cody. Appreciate your time. What I like about the video that we've been showing here, and obviously it's video that you've shot, and this is one of the reasons why I think that people should seek this out. You can find it online, AJC.com. It's really cinematic. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't see this angle for football very much where, oftentimes game film is sort of shot from the sideline, but this is sort of really shot kind of in the action. It's obviously not during a game, but it's a sort of an up closeness and personal element to the angle that you wouldn't see with just sort of regular game film. And I think it's a really interesting way to see football. It's very, for lack of a better way of saying it, very artistic, very, very cinematic. So I think for people who've maybe seen a lot of video of a lot of these recruits, I don't think you've ever quite seen video like this. And I would say it's worth your time to seek it out because of that.
And they've got articles on AJC.com about all these guys. And we also, the AJC video team we were working with, they're launching this whole new thing where they're doing a lot more high school football coverage, kind of like they used to when I was growing up. So this AJC varsity's coming out. They did really great videos with the stuff I shot, and it's edited really slick and looks awesome. But you also find out a lot about these guys. And, obviously we care a lot about the Georgia guys on this show, but just finding out from all of these guys, you got some characters out there who are going to be fun. And fun guys, those guys, a lot of them, most of them are going to the SEC, right? So we're going to see all these faces again. Really fun stuff if you check out the videos, AJC.com.
Cody, appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time. Great work as always. And, of course, we appreciate what you do here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp as well, too.
No problem. Happy to be here.
Thanks a lot. One more thing before you get ready to wrap things up here today. I want to make you aware of another big sporting event set to take place in the Atlanta area in the coming days. Of course, one of the things I'm incredibly proud of is our friends at East Lake get a chance to host the Tour Championship to wrap up the PGA Tour season. A lot of money on the line for the best golfers in the world. It's the top 30 players in the sport returning back to historic East Lake. It's August 20th to the 24th. And if you permit me to editorialize here for a moment, they're going. Here's one thing you understand. I'm a big golf fan. I don't talk about golf because I get paid to talk about football, but I'm a big golf fan. Here's one thing you need to, I believe, and since I'm doing the read, I'll kind of embellish here. I love going back to traditional stroke play for this. I think that's a really fun way. I think it's easier for people to probably kind of understand, follow along with. This is a tremendous event. I love it when it comes at this point in the summer, kind of pre-college football beginning. I think it's easy to get out there. There's a lot of really fun hospitality associated with this. I've been many times. Believe it or not, I've even played East Lake before, which is, I'm sure, shocking to many of you, but did sneak out there one or two times. It's a really, really great experience. It comes up August the 20th to the 24th. They also do a great thing for like families here. If you want to take your kids, a great way to sort of experience that with them. And let's face it, it is the dramatic finale to the PGA Tour season as the biggest golfers in the world compete for the biggest prize in golf there as well. So check out tourchampionship.com for more on that. Tourchampionship.com. Also a lot of dogs in this event. Sepp Straka, Russell Henley, Harris English, Brian Harmon, all kinds of dogs on tour kind of getting their last shot at a big payday before the season comes to an end. We love this event. Proud to have it in Atlanta. Get your tickets online. Tourchampionship.com. All right. A little bit of an explanation for our golden shoe here today. So this was shared with me on X yesterday. One of the dangerous things about SEC Media Days is there are cameras just sort of pointing in every direction. And when I'm at SEC Media Days, I mostly spend most of my time trying to stay out of shots because, look, if I know I'm on camera, maybe I can look halfway presentable. But if you see me not on camera, or if you notice me on camera and I didn't know I was on camera, I am almost always doing something weird. That's just the way it goes. I can't help it. It just seems to be true. So this was shared with me yesterday. Y'all may know who JD Piquel is, the video guy from On3, one of about 1,000 video guys they seem to have now. There was a GIF of a high five between JD, LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. Bryce Coon, who covers LSU for On3, also wrote in to say, what is BA doing in the background here? And what you see me doing is, one of my weird habits, and this is a bad habit because it's just terrible for your teeth, I pop mints, like, like the breath mints, things like that. I pop mints like sort of one right after the other, basically like I'm chain smoking, just one mint right after the other. And I believe that's Kaylee Manziel with me. She and I had walked over to the sundry shop at the Omni Hotel. I paid like $8 for a pack of mints, which I complained about for the rest of the week. But like one right after the other, I'm just popping the mint. My breath is bad because I drink a lot of coffee, but it's also just sort of I have a lot of nervous energy. That's just an example of that. So apparently this showed up in GIF form, courtesy of our friends at On3. Not my most flattering moment on video of all time. But nonetheless, that is some fun. Maybe that's not Kaylee. I don't know who is that. Either way, fun stuff there. We'll give everybody involved a golden shoe for that. Lousy, stinking Gators. How about the Gator Hater Updater? 1,734 days. That's how long it's been since Florida's beaten Georgia. That's our Gator Hater Updater. Y'all have a great day. See you back here tomorrow, DawgNation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And on video, time now for the R.S. Andrews Cool Down. R.S. Andrews is the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. I will tell you this, in light of like the unflattering moment on video there of popping the mint, there was also, if you're a longtime viewer to the program, you know that one of the things I complain about a lot is I have a really bad, what I call listening face. A listening face is if I'm ever doing like reporter work, which, they don't let me do a lot of because I'll mess something up, but microphone in hand, interviewing the guy, getting the information, I have a tendency to have the worst countenance while I'm listening to that person talk. Because someone else is getting to talk besides me, I guess. That's probably what the issue is. But I have just this terrible listening face, typically speaking. It just looks awful. It really, really looks bad. So the other day, our friends from Score Atlanta, who I consider a great partner, they shared some photos from our Corky Kell Dave Hunter Classic kickoff luncheon. And I was a portion of that luncheon. I'm the MC. I'm sort of walking around talking to some of the coaches. I'm talking to, I believe it was Daniel Bruner, the head coach of Walton, one of the best coaches in the state, one of the best guys in football. This is someone that I genuinely have a lot of respect for. I find him to be incredibly interesting. He's insightful. But as he's talking, I have the worst look on my face. It's, of all the bad listening faces I've ever had, this is by far the worst. I got so many compliments because I was dressed up on Monday, and then I go and ruin it all with this like horrible listening face. Really, really bad. So apparently we've had a little bit of a delay audio compared to video today. I'm not quite so sure what that is, but we'll see if we can do that better for tomorrow. Sons of Georgia says, what's your favorite mint? Without a doubt, 100%. The mints that I live for are the Buc-ee's mints. I do. I like the Buc-ee's cinnamon mints. I do. And y'all, it's so bad for your teeth, but like Cody, who travels with us a lot, all the people who travel with us will tell you, like when we're driving road trip, going to Oxford for a game or something like that, I'm just doing one mint right after the other. I always say that my anxiety won't allow me to sort of sit there without some small dopamine rush. I have to have that little bit of a dopamine rush. I can't just sit there, I have to be doing something. And so I'm just popping a mint one right after the other. Just awful for your teeth. It's one of the reasons why if I ever take a picture, I smile like this because I don't want my teeth to be shown. Yeah. How about this from Colby Strotter? Says, getting ready to smoke a chuck roast and make some chili for Saturday. Getting tuned up for the season. Boy, I love that. A good smoked chili, like a smoked queso. Some of these smoked dip type things, that's some of the best stuff you can have. Like a smoked Brunswick stew that has that smoky flavor in it. Boy, I love that. Anonymous Handle says that maybe the new brick is what's keeping the audio and video delayed. I don't believe that's what it is, but we'll see if we can fix that. I'm always hesitant to say this because I don't want you to click out of the video because that's death for me. But if you did click out and click back in, that might fix it. But don't try because I don't want you to leave. Foster Moss says, BA the Mint Terminator. It's one of my worst habits. I do think I mean, honestly, sometimes I think, would it just be healthier if I smoked? Because like, there's no way like this is good for your teeth. Just, of course, I also can't have just one. It's going to be 2 or 3 sloshing around, sugar. The Buc-ee's mints are supposedly sugar free, but come to find out, I'm not quite so sure that's what that actually even means. Eric GA, by the way, says, thanks for making my workday at Boeing Aerospace more enjoyable to listen to Dog Nation each morning. Eric, I appreciate that so much. And first of all, earlier today, you were also encouraging some folks at the like button, which I appreciate too. One of the things I just don't do well enough is encouraging folks on that sort of thing. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for being part of the show. And I say this all the time, and I mean this as sincerely as I'm capable. Working at a place like Boeing, building those big aircraft, things like that, that's real, legitimate work. That's the sort of work that's making something from nothing. That's work that matters. And so if you're listening to me while you do work that matters, it feels like my time today has been well spent. I really appreciate that. George Griffin, by the way, wants to bring his own boat from Florida up to the Tennessee River on September 13th. What do y'all think? Yeah, I don't know how hard that is to do or not. It'd be a fun thing to do, though. I don't really quite know like what the rules are on that. Like what I wanted to do the last time was, much like Washington crossing the Delaware, I wanted to sail the riverboat from Georgia to Tennessee. As it turns out, the river's not deep enough in certain parts to perhaps do that. But I wanted like a full-on invasion. Apparently that's not going to happen.